I stood in the back of the Grand Riverside Ballroom, watching my best friend of 40 years accept a crystal trophy for outstanding community service, and all I could think about was the night 3 months after my husband died, when she looked me in the eye and said, "Teresa, honey, you need me now more than ever. Let me handle everything." So I did. I let her handle my finances. I let her handle my late husband Richard's business accounts. I let her handle the sale of our summer cottage in Cape Cod. I let her handle it all because I was drowning in grief, and she was my lifeline, or so I thought. The ballroom was packed with 300 people in evening gowns and tuxedos, all of them applauding Linda Morrison, the woman who'd been my maid of honor, who'd held my hand through 2 miscarriages, who'd taught my daughter Emma how to braid her hair when I was too sick with pneumonia to get out of bed. The woman I'd have trusted with my life. The woman who'd stolen over $400,000 from me. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up to where this really started, because the thing about betrayal is that it doesn't announce itself. It creeps in wearing the face of love. Richard died on a Tuesday in March, massive heart attack, while trimming the hedges in our backyard in Westchester County. 1 minute he was humming along to the radio. The next minute, our neighbor Mrs. Chen was pounding on my door, screaming for me to call 911. He was gone before the ambulance arrived. The funeral was a blur. Our daughter Emma flew in from Seattle with her husband and kids. Our son Marcus drove up from Charlotte. The house filled with casseroles and condolence cards, and people who meant well, but whose faces I couldn't quite register through the fog of shock. Linda was there every single day. She organized the reception after the funeral. She helped me sort through Richard's clothes. She sat with me at 2 in the morning when I couldn't sleep, when the silence of the house felt like it might crush me. She was the friend everyone wishes they had. 2 weeks after the funeral, she showed up with a briefcase. "Teresa," she said, settling into the kitchen chair across from me, "I know this is the last thing you want to think about right now, but we need to talk about paperwork." I was still wearing Richard's old Columbia sweatshirt. I hadn't washed my hair in 4 days. The thought of dealing with banks and insurance companies made me want to crawl back into bed and never emerge. "I can't," I whispered. "I just can't do this right now." Linda reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You don't have to. That's why I'm here. I've been through this, remember? When Paul died, I know exactly how overwhelming it is. Her husband had passed from cancer 5 years earlier. If anyone understood, it was Linda. I could help you," she continued gently. "Just temporarily. Just until you're ready to handle things yourself. I could talk to the banks, deal with Richard's business partners, sort through the financial stuff. You shouldn't have to do this alone." I looked at her, this woman who'd been beside me through every major moment of my adult life, and I felt something in my chest unclench just slightly. "Would you?" I asked. "I don't even know where to start." "Of course, honey. That's what friends are for." The next day, I signed a power of attorney giving Linda temporary access to my accounts. She said it was just to make things easier, to let her handle the immediate necessities. I didn't even read it carefully. I just signed where she pointed. Over the next 3 months, Linda was constantly in motion on my behalf, or so she claimed. She'd stop by with documents for me to sign, always with a cup of my favorite coffee from the cafe down the street, always with that same concerned, loving expression. "The life insurance company needs this form. Richard's business partner wants to buy out his share. We should take the offer. The cottage needs some repairs before we can sell it. I'll handle getting the contractors." I signed everything. I was barely functioning. Some days I couldn't even remember if I'd eaten breakfast. The idea of parsing through legal documents was impossible. Emma called every other day from Seattle, worried about me. During one call in late June, she asked, "Mom, have you thought about talking to a financial advisor, just to make sure everything's in order?" "Linda's handling it all," I told her. "You remember Linda, sweetheart. She knows what she's doing." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "I know you trust her, Mom, but maybe you should still have someone independent take a look, just to be safe." I felt a flash of irritation. "Emma, Linda lost her husband too. She understands what I'm going through. I don't need a stranger poking through my business. Okay, Mom, Emma said quietly. I'm just worried about you. I know, baby. But I'm fine. Linda's taking care of everything. Except she wasn't. She was taking everything. The wake-up call came in mid-July. I was finally starting to emerge from the worst of the grief, starting to think about maybe going back to my part-time work at the library, when I got a letter from the bank. It was about the mortgage on the Cape Cod cottage, the one Richard and I had bought 30 years ago, the one where we'd spent every summer with the kids. The letter said the cottage had been sold. Closed escrow 2 weeks ago. I stared at that letter for a full minute, convinced I was misreading it. Linda had mentioned selling the cottage eventually, but she'd said we'd do it together, that I'd have time to go through it one last time, to take the things I wanted to keep. I called her immediately. Linda, I just got a letter from the bank about the cottage. It says it's been sold? Oh. Her voice was bright, cheerful. Yes, I was going to tell you. A buyer came in with a cash offer, over asking price. I didn't want you to have to go through the emotional turmoil of dealing with showings and negotiations, so I just handled it. The money's already been deposited into your account. But I didn't even get to say goodbye to it, I said, and my voice cracked. There are things there, Richard's fishing rods, the kids' artwork on the fridge. Honey, I know, but trust me, it's better this way. Ripping the Band-Aid off, you know? The money will help so much with your expenses. I'll bring you the paperwork tomorrow. She did bring paperwork the next day, but when I asked to see the bank statement showing the deposit, she waved her hand dismissively. It's all processed through the estate account right now, remember? Once everything's settled, it'll transfer to your personal account. These things take time. Something felt off, but I couldn't quite put my finger on what. Linda had been handling everything for months. Why would I doubt her now? But that night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Emma's suggestion to have an independent advisor look at things. At 3 a.m, I finally admitted to myself that I wasn't being paranoid or ungrateful. I just needed peace of mind. The next morning, I called a financial advisor that our old neighbor had recommended. His name was David Chen, Mrs. Chen's son, actually, who'd gone into finance. I'd known him since he was in Little League. Mrs. Patterson, he said when I came into his office that Friday, I'm so sorry about Richard. He was a good man. Thank you, David. I need your help with something, and I need you to be completely honest with me, even if you think I won't like what you have to say. I laid out everything. The power of attorney, Linda handling all the finances, the cottage sale. David listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Mrs. Patterson, I'd like to request copies of all your bank statements and account activity for the past 4 months. Can you do that? Linda has most of the documents. Request them directly from the banks, he said. You're the account holder. They have to provide them to you. Something in his tone made my stomach drop. David, what are you thinking? I'm not thinking anything yet, he said carefully. But I've seen situations before where power of attorney gets misused. I just want to make sure everything's above board. It took a week to get all the statements. I told Linda I needed them for my own records, and she seemed slightly annoyed but handed them over. David also helped me request additional documents directly from the banks. When David called me back into his office, his face told me everything before he even opened his mouth. Mrs. Patterson, I need you to sit down. The numbers he showed me made the room spin. The cottage hadn't sold for over asking price. It had sold for $200,000 less than market value, and only $300,000 had been deposited into my account. The buyer was listed as an LLC called Morrison Holdings. Linda's maiden name was Morrison. Richard's life insurance payout of $500,000? Only $250,000 had made it to my account. His share of the business? Sold for $180,000, but I'd only seen $90,000. The repairs on the cottage before the sale? The contractors Linda had hired had charged $45,000 for work that, according to the records David found, had never been done. In total, over 4 months, Linda had siphoned over $400,000 from me. "I'm so sorry," David said. "We need to call the police." But I held up my hand. Something was crystallizing in my mind, cold and hard as diamond. "Not yet," I said. "First, I need to know if she's done this to anyone else." That question led me down a rabbit hole I wish I'd never had to explore. David helped me hire a private investigator named Rebecca Torres. What Rebecca uncovered over the next 6 weeks made me physically ill. Linda had done this before. Multiple times. She'd befriended at least 5 other widows in our county over the past 8 years. Always the same pattern. Swoop in during their grief. Offer to help with finances. Slowly drain their accounts. The amounts varied, but the method was identical. Most of the women never even realized they'd been robbed. They trusted Linda, just like I had. One woman, Patricia Gomez, had lost her husband and then lost her house when she couldn't pay the mortgage. She'd thought her husband had left her in debt. In reality, Linda had stolen the insurance money that should have saved her. Another woman, Joyce Kim, had actually gone to the police, but Linda had covered her tracks so well that the district attorney said there wasn't enough evidence. Joyce was labeled as a confused, grieving widow who'd probably mismanaged her own money. And here's the thing that made me furious beyond measure. While Linda was stealing from widows, she was also building a reputation as a philanthropist. She volunteered at the hospital. She donated to charities. She organized fundraisers. Everyone loved her. She was scheduled to receive the Westchester Community Foundation's Humanitarian Award at their annual gala in September. I sat in my living room with all the evidence spread out on my coffee table, and I thought about what Richard would want me to do. Richard, who'd always said that the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. I could go to the police right now. Maybe they'd have enough evidence this time. Maybe they wouldn't. Linda was smart, careful. She'd wiggle out of it somehow, just like before. Or I could make sure that everyone knew exactly who Linda Morrison really was. I chose option 2. The gala was on September 15th, a Saturday evening. I bought a ticket, which nearly killed me because it cost $500 and Linda had stolen so much that money was tight. But I needed to be there. I spent the next 2 weeks preparing. Rebecca helped me create packets, one for each table at the gala. Inside each packet was a folder containing bank statements showing the discrepancies in my accounts, with Linda's signatures on the withdrawal authorizations, copies of the cottage sale documents, showing how Morrison Holdings had bought it below market value and resold it within a month for full price. A timeline of Linda's relationship with me and the other widows, complete with dates and amounts stolen. Statements from Patricia Gomez and Joyce Kim, detailing their own experiences. A summary from David Chen's analysis of the financial crimes. Contact information for the district attorney and the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. The night before the gala, Emma called me. "Mom, I've been thinking about what you told me about Linda. Are you sure you want to do this? Once you expose her publicly, there's no taking it back." "I'm sure," I said. "She needs to face consequences, and she needs to stop being able to do this to other women. What if people don't believe you? What if they think you're just a bitter, confused widow? Then, I'll know I tried," I said. "But Emma, I have the evidence. It's not about whether they believe me, it's about making sure they can't ignore it." There was a long pause. Then Emma said, "I'm proud of you." "Mom, Dad would be too." The gala was held at the Grand Riverside Ballroom, overlooking the Hudson River. Chandeliers, champagne, women in designer gowns. I wore the navy dress Richard had always loved, the one I'd worn to our 40th anniversary party. I arrived early and worked with Rebecca, who'd posed as catering staff. We placed a folder at each place setting, 300 in total. The folders were elegant, cream-colored, with a simple label: "The Truth About Linda Morrison." Then I took my seat at a table near the back and waited. Linda was at the head table, radiant in a silver gown, laughing with the foundation's board members. She saw me across the room and gave me a cheerful wave. I waved back. The dinner service began. Salad, then salmon, then a chocolate torte. People chatted, glasses clinked. No one had opened their folders yet. Then came the speeches. The foundation director talked about the importance of community service. A previous award recipient shared a touching story. And then it was time for Linda to receive her award. She walked to the podium to thunderous applause, her eyes shining with what looked like genuine emotion. "Thank you," she began, her voice trembling. "This award means more to me than I can express. When I lost my husband Paul 5 years ago, I felt like I'd lost my purpose. But then I realized that the best way to honor his memory was to help others the way people had helped me, to be there for those who are struggling, who need someone to lean on." She went on for another 3 minutes about compassion, about community, about being the change we wish to see in the world. It was a beautiful speech. It would have moved me to tears if I didn't know she was a fraud. "So thank you," she concluded, "for this incredible honor. I promise to continue serving this community with everything I have." More applause. She held up the crystal trophy, beaming. And then, as she returned to her seat, the foundation director said, "Before we continue with the evening, we invite everyone to review the materials at your place settings. There's some important information about our upcoming initiatives." I held my breath. One by one, people began opening their folders. I watched it ripple through the ballroom like a wave. The rustle of paper, then silence, then gasps. At table 5, a woman put her hand over her mouth. At table 12, a man's face went red with anger. At the head table, a board member grabbed Linda's arm and shoved a folder in front of her. Linda's face drained of all color as she looked down at the documents. Her eyes scanned the pages, then snapped up to scan the room. When her gaze found me in the back, our eyes locked. I didn't look away. The ballroom erupted in chaos. People were standing, pointing, shouting questions. Linda was shaking her head, saying something I couldn't hear over the noise. One of the board members stood and spoke into the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, please. We need to understand what's happening here." I stood up. My legs felt shaky, but I made myself walk to the front of the room. Someone handed me a microphone. "My name is Teresa Patterson," I said, and my voice echoed through the ballroom. "Linda Morrison has been my best friend for 40 years. When my husband died in March, she offered to help me manage my finances while I grieved. What she actually did was steal over $400,000 from me." The room went completely silent. "Everything you need to verify this is in the folders in front of you," I continued. "Bank statements, property records, testimonies from other victims. Linda has been doing this for years, targeting widows when they're most vulnerable. She befriends them, gains their trust, and robs them blind. And while she's been stealing from grieving women, she's been building a reputation as a humanitarian." Linda stood up, her face twisted with fury. "This is slander. You're lying. The documents speak for themselves," I said calmly. "I'm not asking anyone to take my word for it. I'm asking you to look at the evidence." A man I recognized as the district attorney stood up from table 8. "Mrs. Patterson, have you filed a police report?" "I'm filing one Monday morning," I said. "Tonight, I just wanted everyone to know who they're honoring with this award." Linda tried to run. She actually grabbed her purse and headed for the exit, but 2 of the board members blocked her way. The district attorney was already on his phone, presumably calling the police. I handed the microphone back and walked out through the side door. I didn't need to watch the rest. I'd done what I came to do. The next 72 hours were a whirlwind. The police arrested Linda Sunday morning. The story made the local news by Monday evening. By Wednesday, the FBI had gotten involved because Linda's schemes crossed state lines. Patricia Gomez called me, crying. "Thank you," she said. "I thought I was crazy. I thought I'd just lost track of everything after Miguel died. But I wasn't crazy. It was her." Joyce Kim sent me flowers with a note that said, "Finally, Someone believed us. 3 more women came forward, women we hadn't even known about, who'd been too ashamed to report what happened to them. The district attorney said that with all the evidence and witnesses, Linda was looking at 15 to 20 years for wire fraud, identity theft, and elder abuse. Emma flew out to stay with me for a week. "Mom," she said one evening as we sat on the porch, "I'm sorry I didn't push harder when I suggested you get a second opinion. I should have insisted." "Baby, you tried," I said. "I was the one who didn't want to listen. I was the one who chose to trust Linda over my own daughter's instincts. That's on me." "You were grieving. That's not an excuse. But it's a lesson." 2 months later, in November, I did something I'd been thinking about since the night of the gala. I used some of the money that had been recovered from Linda's accounts to start a nonprofit organization called Second Look Financial Advocacy. The mission was simple: provide free financial advisory services to widows and widowers in the first year after their loss. Help them understand what they're signing, what their rights are, how to spot financial abuse. Partner them with vetted, trustworthy professionals. David Chen volunteered to be our first advisor. Patricia Gomez became our outreach coordinator. Joyce Kim joined our board. We weren't trying to build an empire. We just wanted to make sure what happened to us didn't happen to anyone else. At our launch event, I gave a short speech. "I lost my husband," I said, "and then I almost lost everything else because I trusted the wrong person at the wrong time. But I learned something important. It's never too late to fight back. It's never too late to protect yourself and others. And grief doesn't have to make you powerless." Linda's trial was scheduled for the following March, exactly 1 year after Richard's death. The prosecutors told me they wanted me to testify. I said yes, because here's what I want everyone to understand. Linda didn't just steal money from me. She stole my trust, my sense of safety, my ability to grieve my husband without added trauma. She saw my pain and decided to profit from it, but she also underestimated me. She thought I'd stay broken, stay confused, stay grateful for her help even as she picked my pockets. She told me I needed her more than ever, and at the time, drowning in grief, I believed her. But what I actually needed was to remember who I was before the grief. I needed to remember that I'd raised 2 kids, put myself through college at night while working full-time, survived Richard's heart attack when he was 45 and the doctors said he'd never fully recover. I needed to remember that I was strong. Linda counted on me, forgetting that. She was wrong. So yes, I let her handle everything. And then I handled her. On the 1-year anniversary of Richard's death, I visited his grave. I brought his favorite flowers, those orange lilies he always said reminded him of sunset. "I did it," I told him. "I know you'd tell me not to be vindicated or petty, that you'd want me to forgive her. But Rich, I can't. Not yet. Maybe not ever. What I can do is make sure she doesn't hurt anyone else. I think you'd understand that." The wind picked up, rustling through the trees overhead, and I chose to believe it was him telling me I'd done the right thing. I'm 62 years old. Linda Morrison was my best friend for 4 decades. She held my hand through the worst moments of my life, and then she used those moments to rob me. But I survived her, just like I survived losing Richard, and now I spend my days making sure other widows don't have to learn the same lessons I did. Sometimes the people closest to you are the ones you need to watch most carefully. Sometimes the hand you're holding is the one picking your pocket. And sometimes, the friend who says you need them more than ever is really the one who needs to disappear. So I granted that wish. Not mine. Hers.